shadows whisper when the lights go dim. Cold breath crawling on my skin. Voices echo from the other side. Is it real or just my mind? Things paranormal talks in the dark. Secrets buried leave a burning mark. We interview the dead, we debate the unknown. Chasing shadows where the seeds are sown. Fingers tapping on a Ouija board. Broken silence like a shattered chord. Eerie hums in the...
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a new Things Paranormal Talks. It went smoother than I thought.
Yeah.
And it didn't cut off. So Restream sorted everything out.
A little bit.
That's fine.
I forgive you.
Well, thanks. That's nice. It's not my fault. It's Restream. I can't help it.
Yeah.
Tonight we have not one but two gentlemen, and they are called Mark Reeder and Ron Meyer. How are you doing?
We're doing
Excellent.
good. It's a nice day in Boulder, Colorado. Sunny. Temperature is 57 degrees, maybe a little rain later. Perfect. In paradise here.
That's good. Better than cold. All right. Could you guys, in turn, introduce yourselves? What do we know you from?
So I'll try that. So in 2013, I was hired to produce. This was the times of, DVDs. You make a lot of money doing DVD series and so on. It was a grand old time for independent producers, and we were hired by this company that had unique access to all the outlets where you could sell DVDs, and they wanted me to do a series of series, and one of them was to do one on Bigfoot, the Bigfoot phenomenon, which was just becoming kind of well known. And I kind of reluctantly decided to do that because my daughter wanted to do it, and it became Chasing Bigfoot, huge hit, and I think it's like 6 parts. And I interviewed a lot of people who had Bigfoot experiences. And their stories were mostly ones of visual sightings of one kind or another. And I could tell that they weren't lying, but I just couldn't accept the idea that they were actually spotting some sort of hominoid, whether a kind of a human sort of thing or a primate. But yet the experiences were real to them. And then at one point, one of the people I interviewed said, I think he used the word interdimensional, and that kind of is a catch-all for its science, but we don't know exactly what it means. And so I thought, I'd like to pursue that and see where that goes. But at the same time, I had been working with Mark. We had done some science fiction books together, and he had worked for me doing educational videos. That was one of the other things I did. And I talked him into doing Aliens 2035, which is kind of the story of how we imagine a kind of race of Bigfoots interacting with humans. Would you say, Mark?
Absolutely, yeah.
And we were just kind of winging it. I think they were kind of friendly with people, but mysterious. They reproduce not sexually, but there's a term when you do it. I can't remember it now. When you don't do it sexually, you just create another version of yourself by some process. It's got a name. And we had them interacting with another kind of alien entity. And without revealing the ending, it was quite a large book. It did quite well. And that was Mark's introduction to Bigfoot. And it was not unlike, kind of a number of people told stories of Bigfoot when I was interviewing them, that they could sense them, that they were there in families, and that they had a kind of similar structure to, that we have, our family structure with parents, adults, and children, but with special capabilities of, being able to move in and out of existence and so on. So that was kind of the beginning of my serious investigation into the nature of Bigfoot. You want to play off of that, Mark, in any way?
Yeah, Ron and I kind of go back a long ways before that. We met in a martial art called Aikido, where Ron was one of the biggest guys in the room, and everybody else was afraid of him. And I thought, well, what the heck? I might as well just see what he's got. And we ended up beating each other up quite a bit, and then became fast friends. Later on, Ron, as Ron mentioned, he hired me for his video production company doing educational videos. And in that time, he encouraged me to pursue my passion, which was writing science fiction and fantasy novels. And he mentored me for a while on that. And one thing led to another. We did documentaries together. And then in 2018, Ron mentioned the book that he and I worked on, which was about Bigfoot. And that kind of brings us pretty much to where Ron and I are now in terms of looking at Bigfoot not as some hominid creature living in the spaces of in the forests or places like that, but as something much less defined. Even the word interdimensional sort of tries to define it in a scientific manner. In some cases, people use what are known as Einstein-Rosen bridges, which are magnetic portals that can transfer information. And when you think about it, everything around us is information. Even ourselves is information, from our cellular intelligence to our DNA. So information can be transferred like that. But that's just a science staying within its own little box, saying, here's how we could possibly explain this. And as Ron and I as Ron pursued his investigations of it, and he brought me in on it, we had a lot of talks in many of the coffee houses around Boulder. And I'm sure that there are places that are still wondering if we're sane. But we came to this sort of idea after reading after Ron was looking at a paper by Jacques Vallée on presence and mystery, that Bigfoot and paranormal experiences in general are part of a larger manifestation of a presence that has, for millennia now, for at least 50,000 years, been subtly guiding humans by presenting mystery to them. And I like to say this, like humans are as curious as cats, and there's just nothing we won't look at. If it's a sound in the forest somewhere, it's like, oh, I got to go see what that is. I mean, it could be a grizzly bear ready to eat you, but you still got to say, I'm going to go look at that.
Yeah.
So the mystery, this presence creating this mystery, has subtly guided humans for the last 50,000 years toward what we actually don't know, nor do we try to posit it yet, because we're still gathering facts. But it certainly has been involved in human evolution, both technologically and our own evolution in terms of becoming more enlightened.
Yeah.
So I could I'd like to add to that a little bit. Vallée calls it a control hypothesis. And the control aspect refers to something like a thermostat. You guys have thermostats in Holland?
Yeah, we do.
They control air conditioners and heating units, right?
Yeah.
And you set, a temperature. And let's say you didn't know what any of this was, and you just knew that in this room, if things got cold, all of a sudden it would get warmer. And if it got too hot, it would cool down. And that this presence operates like that with regard to mystery. If the mystery, tampers down, a paradigm of science comes along, like the physicalist one, that says everything's reducible to, matter and energy. It throws some wrenches into that, and people start looking for, maybe they invent some new technology, and they start changing the paradigm, because that's going on right now. And if things get too crazy, maybe it slows things down. And so it's been operating that way as this kind of control aspect of everything, including our mental, world of the unconscious, the collective unconscious. His ideas is that can change. Like the Bigfoot is really kind of an archetype of the
Yeah.
wild man or the wild woman. That part of us that wants to be free and in nature, and free of all civilization, and living the good life as we might imagine this kind of wild man or wild woman. And that's gone through this lots of variations in that, and right now it's kind of like it's become one of the ultimate mysteries right now in terms of a meme in at least in our country. And then the UAPs are the other one that are somehow presenting themselves in ways that are impossible to account for by Newtonian physics or even quantum physics, the way they move. Incidentally, we one of the so do you have any questions on that so far? That's kind of the hypotheses we're dealing with. And so at a certain point I decided to see if I could substantiate that one way or another. And that led to this protocol that I do.
Are you still active in the field?
Oh yeah, we had in the last 2 months I did the protocol in March at the Sedona Ascension Conference. It's a lot of really rich white people paying good money.
Those are always good.
You probably have a few of those in your country too, I guess.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do.
Too many, you can have them.
Well, there was a couple there from Norway and from Holland that came all the way just to hear me, not to hear me, but at the last month, the headliner for their big event in the evening, which they call the Skywatch, Chris Bledsoe. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
raises his hands in UAPs, and he brings them in. And so
Yeah.
I was contacted as a replacement for him. And I had done the protocol twice before, relatively small, and I thought, here's an opportunity to do it with a larger group, see if it scales.
Ron,
Yeah.
why don't you explain what the CE6 protocol is?
Okay, so what it is it starts out with a simple mindfulness vipassana meditation. Are you familiar with those terms?
Yeah.
Mindfulness means you isolate some aspect of your experience. I mean, the typical one would be sound. I mean, you can focus on sound, right? Or you could do body sensations.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that, you don't say, you say, I have an itch. You don't say, I am the itch, right? So this gets interesting, in mindfulness when you start talking about self-talk, there you identify with it. But in any case, so that's the mindfulness aspect of Vipassana is the kind of Buddhist meditation where you realize that everything's always changing. And it's pretty easy when you have body sensations, they come and go. Every pain you've ever had is gone, right?
Mhm.
From the time you're a child to now, maybe you have one now. But so I do that mindfulness Vipassana meditation, and then we do this chant, which is based on the 5 vowels that form the basis of all language, and they're A, E, I, O, U. And that the record of those goes back to at least Egypt. It's been carried through. There's a famous place called Monroe Institute where people go to the non-physical realm, and they use the chant by a guy who picked it up from one of those shamans in Peru. And so I got it from my enlightenment teacher. And we do that 5 or 6 times. And then we communicate, the people communicate what occurred for them. They don't argue or debate, they just say what occurred. It's pretty simple. And then we repeat it multiple times. And I've done this now 4 times. It started last summer at a place we call Church Creek, and it was all about Bigfoot. In every way that Bigfoot could possibly show up, from proto-speech, tree breaks, and we even got a music beat, with no sources ever, just showing up and hearing it. Um, there was subsonic sounds, 17 you don't hear, but you can use equipment to record them and know that you had them, which affects your internal system. People had weird feelings going through their body, floating and all that sort of stuff. So not only were there physical manifestations, but physiological, mental ones for people. And so there's part of the control theory is that the the archetypes that we have in the subconscious can be modified, and they probably can be modified not only at the individual level, because what the wild man means for you is probably a little different than it means for me, and so on. But there's a universal one, and that can be modified, I think, by what happens at these times of events. So anyhow, going back to Sedona, it turns out that I thought maybe this would be good for, like, since the largest I'd done before was around 10 people, 30, 40. Well, we gave a talk, and then everybody wanted to come, and there turned out to be well over 200 people. So that was like, oh my God, how am I
Wow.
going to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I do this namaste practice in the beginning, which is, you look into each other's eyes like I'm looking into yours, and the God in me, or the oneness in me, recognizes the God or the oneness in you, and vice versa. And then have the partners change a little bit. So after that, I thought we had control of the lights at the football stadium that this was occurring in, but I didn't. Once they were turned off, it went complete dark, because Sedona is a dark city, dark sky city. Do you know what those are?
Mm-hmm.
You don't allow any artificial light at all
Nope.
when it gets dark. So I had to figure out what to do, and I couldn't do exactly what I wanted. But one of the things, we had a thermal going, and I usually don't have people look to the sky or open their eyes, because it's such a dominant experiential sensor as our eyes. But I did, because I was running out of things to do. And the moment I said look to the sky, my thermal recorded instantaneously, in 16 seconds, 4 UAPs on the thermal going back and forth like this 4 times, in a way that, the same thing as a tic tac. So you're familiar with those now?
Yeah.
Same phenomena. What kind of coincidence is that, huh?
Yeah.
The other thing the group did is they took pictures, and they got pictures of, like, motherships and triangular ships that occurred during the thing. And one thing that's kind of universal with Bigfoot experiences is that they have a smell, kind of a musky, sometimes sweet, sometimes really bad, associated with their presence, but you don't see them, but you smell them. And we had that smell twice at Church Creek, but it's the one common experience that everybody had in the football stadium. The smell wafted around amongst everybody, the 200. I smelled it. So everybody smelled it. And as smell is a very primitive sense for us people. But then the coolest thing at the end is that somebody said, I did the chant, I increased the speed of the chant, and somebody said, well, we'd like to form a circle and do the chant. And so over 200 people formed a perfect circle, holding hands, and did the chant all on their own.
Wow.
So I was amazed.
That must have been a goosebump moment.
Yeah, we could capture that, on our video. At least, on the thermal, you could see that weird circle, I wasn't in the middle of the circle, but what the heck.
But still, that's a beautiful experience, especially if you just thought it would be 30 people and it ended up being 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what's going on? That's the question. Does it substantiate the valet control hypothesis? Because whatever it was, the only aspect that was similar to Church Creek was the smell. There was nothing else that would be attributed to Bigfoot. It was all aerial phenomena.
Yeah.
And people had their lasers and they were pointing, there's a mothership, and all that. But because it went totally dark, I couldn't film anything.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good that the thermal does.
yeah. And then recently, a couple weekends ago, we did another one in a place in Arkansas, another conference, and 60 people showed up to my surprise because after we gave the talk, we said, anybody want to come? By the way, the rich people paid over $30,000 to have that experience jointly. It
Pooh.
wasn't cheap. It was an
Whoa.
extra event, that they had to pay for.
Wouch.
But I think it was worth it for them. Oh, well, there's one story I always like to tell. Is two people, when we were doing the Namaste thing, realized they were each other's soul mates and they ran off together and doing camping.
Small world.
Yeah.
Small world.
Um, and then something totally different happened at Eureka Springs, and that is there's this thing called the MUPAS. It's a device that's full of sensors that for environmental factors like magnetism and electromagnetism and air pressure and electromagnetic as well. And they've been using it with these are American terms, MUFON and
Yeah.
one at Blindfog Ranch, and there's a CE5 protocol that Stephen Greer does, and we had the strongest result ever recorded on that device. The most profound thing. There were four physical variables. The first one, you know what a gyroscope is, right? And there's an X, Y, and Z accent,
Yeah.
dimension. And the minute right before I said the first chant to the end of the experiment, the Z axis started spiraling up, which means it's kind of like a portal opening. And it continued for the full 90 minutes, slowly, gradually corkscrewing up. Of course, we didn't feel we were doing anything different. And it wasn't rising off the table that it was sitting on. But then towards the last third, there was a base magnetic reading for that place. And the amplitude of it jumped way up about 5 times and stayed there to the end. At the same time, the air pressure dropped incredibly. And we had isolated huge electromagnetic spikes. And they had never had a result like that with any other investigation.
That's amazing.
So
Yeah.
that brings us to now.
That is amazing. Are you in close contact with MUFON?
Well, I know people there individually. Because I know the one in Colorado, and I can have easy access to them if I want to.
Do you, when you experience something like UAP, do you always contact MUFON that you saw UAPs?
Never done it.
Oh, you never done. Okay.
I haven't. This is really the first time I really had I didn't see it. It was only later when I looked at the thermal footage. Oh, look what we got.
Well, that's a nice discovery in the end.
Yeah, I mean, what the heck is that?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you
So-
always been spiritual?
Spiritual. I've had unusual things happen during my life spontaneously. What are called non-dual experiences, where the self goes away.
Mhm.
Mark and I teach a practice, a flow practice that gets people into that state. I've had multiple out-of-body experiences, since I was a teenager. They just show up in times of crisis, usually. And because I've been in the media for so long, I've been able to use the cachet to explore masters in all these Eastern religious things. By the way, do you know Peter Ralston? Have you ever heard of him?
No.
I personally haven't. No.
Yeah, he created a unique kind of martial arts, which was really important in mind and Mark growth. We have this effortless power and situational awareness, and led to the practices that gets us into the flow state. And he's got a huge presence in Holland and a lot of followers. I thought maybe you might. It's called Chen Ching. I'm tired of talking, Mark. You talk for a while.
Well, in answer to your question about spiritual, I'm a Sufi, and Sufism has been around probably since Zoroaster. And the interesting part of Sufism, or the part of Sufism that really attracts me, is its openness to all experiences. So it doesn't eliminate a religion or a practice because it doesn't fall directly in line with Sufi beliefs. It opens up and says, what is common among all beliefs? What does this belief bring into my experience to make me a better person? And I, working with Ron on this particular project, on all of his paranormal projects, has really opened that channel of listening to people instead of already having an answer for them. Which is what a lot of people do. It's comforting to say, "Oh, I already know the answer," you know, and it's actually very uncomfortable to admit, you know, I don't have the answer. But if we say, I have a question, then the answer might be there.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
Sufis say, I have a question. And when Ron and I started working on this, as I said before, I was very skeptical. And now when Ron and I talk about these things, I'm always asking questions. I'm saying, well, I have a question about this, Ron. How would an interdimensional being work? And
And I
why
say,
wouldn't
Dan,
you be
if I
able to
know,
capture an interdimensional being? I mean, seriously, if it's there for a moment, why wouldn't you be able to catch it on film? Why wouldn't you be able to lay a trap for it or something like that?
Yeah.
And so as Ron and I explore these questions, we've gone the route from a Bigfoot being a hominid creature to an interdimensional creature to a presence. And the presence, coming back to Vallee's control system hypothesis, the presence makes a lot of sense when we think about the paranormal.
Yeah.
Not that everybody's paranormal experience is a good one. Not that everybody says, oh my gosh, it's like Christmas. No, people have unbelievably frightening experiences. And I can only imagine what that's like for them. I've never had one like that myself. But if the control system hypothesis is about creating a mystery that gives individuals experiences that they can use in many different ways. I think a really good example of this is Stephen Jobs and Apple. He has these experiences and he comes up with iPod, iPhone, iPad. And now he is not an engineer. He's not a computer genius. So, but he has the wit to be able to find the people who are. And he presents to them these ideas and says, how can we do this? He doesn't say, this is how we're going to do it. He says, how can we do this?
Yeah.
And they work together. There's a synergy in that kind of question answer experience that is very creative. And so for me, being a Sufi, the control system hypothesis, the presence, is creating a synergy with me when it happens to me, that I'm not supposed to just sit there and go, well, la-di-da. I'm actually supposed to be part of it. And I add my curiosity to it to try to find an answer.
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know if you know this, but Jobs took the typical trip to the East, to sit with gurus, which he did do.
Yeah.
And he learned how to open up. And my enlightenment teacher went to work for him and designed the original interface for the what was it called? The box, Mark, that the Mac.
The iPod box?
No, earlier.
Oh, the iMac. The iMac.
Huh?
The iMac, right?
Yeah, the early version of the box
Yeah.
in a
That's
cube.
the iMac. Yeah.
And he had, and my enlightenment teacher said that Steve told him that he had a download of what the iPhone would be.
Cool.
Maybe he watched
Mhm.
the monolith on the moon, during the movie, and we came from there. But I don't know.
I
So
think I've seen it somewhere. I think I did.
the movie 2001.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I saw it somewhere. That was back in the day when I watched TV. I don't watch TV anymore.
So it was the first time that rockets moved without, like there was a acceleration behind them, making a lot of noise. They moved silently through space.
Yeah.
And the opening image is a bunch of monkeys jumping up and down in front of what could be interpreted as a screen, a cell phone screen.
Yeah, I can remember something like that. Yes,
And I think
that was funny to me.
But now you know what it is. It's
Exactly.
it's us at the beginning being monkeys, and now we're looking at that darn screen.
Yeah.
So that's a long history of mystery leading to, something that allows us to sit here right now and talk to each other.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the most amazing invention to
Mhm.
humankind. To me, that is.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible for me to talk to somebody in America, for instance, or Australia, or whatever country, because I don't have
You
the
know,
money
it's,
to travel
yeah,
over there.
it's very interesting. I mean, we're talking what 1950. Let's just use that as the initial point where television becomes ubiquitous. I mean, it was invented back in 1928, and then there were other additions to it by 1947. But by 1950, it becomes ubiquitous. So we're talking 75 years, 76 years. We have gone from uh, uh, a, uh, a civilization which basically communicated through mail and telephone to a civilization which now communicates at light speed across the planet. And that doesn't happen because we're lucky. There may be some luck involved in some technologies, but it happens, in my opinion, it happens because we want to do that. And maybe, and if we go back to Jacques Vallée's and the control system hypothesis, if that presence wants us to do that, and it's been guiding us for 50,000 years, there's a little more information behind that we can get to later, but it's been guiding us for 50,000 years along this path, technologically and spiritually, along this path to get to this point. What's next? Why bring us to this point? And this point to me is extremely important. And Ron and I have had many conversations about this. Right now, there's one thing happening in the world that we could not have been predicted 1,000 years ago, and that is the rise of large language models, the rise of AI. Whether you're working with Gemini or Claude or Elon Musk's Grok, AI, it's now ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in your
Yep.
phone.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't in phones 20 years ago, but it certainly is in every iPhone produced today. They call it Apple Intelligence. Nice acronym, AI. I mean, it's really important. So if this presence has been guiding us along these lines, and humans have been willing partners in this, like I said, it's a synergy. What is the next step with these LLMs? Because they mimic uh, uh, human speech very well. And Ron, you should take it from here because you're much more apt at this than I am.
Okay. So the large language models are based on an architecture that's called the autoregressive architecture that produces words and symbols and math on the basis of the statistical relationship. They call them tokens, but we could use words. That's all it is. It's just a relationship statistically, because they were trained on many different words, different texts. And you can train them on texts of individual companies, and then they become useful in a special way, still having the basic architecture of the autoregressive. And what surprised the heck out of me is when I went and did the Church Creek thing looking for Bigfoot, what happened was we recorded a beat. Remember, this is disembodied sounds, right? That people hear, and we record on multiple mics. By the way, it said my name, disembodied. It said Ron, off to the left of me in the air, and other people heard it too. And I stupidly said what, but and didn't want to say anymore. The other form of autoregressive, something or other you would know is music. You know music. You're playing the piano, and the note that follows next, there aren't a lot of choices. If you hit a wrong note, it would sound like shit.
Sure.
So it's really generating the next note by note by note. So that's the same auto-regressive architecture that LLMs are based on. And we actually recorded a rhythmic beat, that I asked AI to carry it further. And it was a beat that went bump, 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 like that. I mean, it was a real beat. It wasn't arbitrary. It wasn't like, tree snaps or wood knocks. It was a beat. So it was pointing us and pointing me, particularly upon reflection, to the origin of language, because it's speculated to learn this autoregressive nature that all language follows. It probably started as music, and you got as beating the drum or other things you could do to create rhythmic sounds, and that would bring the group together, because in order to get language, you need a group. No individual can create language. Without language, none of this would be possible. You agree, right?
Yeah.
We'd still be monkeys in the savannah, wherever it was,
Yeah.
So, and then, not only that, but then we recorded proto-speech, which is this kind of weird thing. Wish I could play some for you, it's in the movie. Do you know who Ron Moorhead is?
Heard about him, yeah.
Yeah, he recorded a lot of weird. They call them the Sierra Sounds. It's identified as proto-speech, and it's kind of high pitched, but it doesn't have but it's auto-regressive. And then the final thing we recorded in that vein was that between the last and second AIU chant, it did the AIU chant back to us that we recorded, whatever it was, the presence, the Bigfoot. And so what it's saying in a big picture way for me is that pay attention to the language and the origin of language, because you got another one coming along right now, which could be the end point of the whole thing that started with language for us humans.
Yeah.
And there's now speculation that this autoregressive architecture, the large language model, that you, me, Mark, and Mary have one running too right now. It rests on us, on our brain in some way, perhaps, that allows us to communicate with each other. And if you start paying attention, you'll notice, especially with regard to your own internal thoughts, like, where did that come from? And if all of a sudden I said, oh, telescopes are nice, you'd say, what happened to him? Like that doesn't fit in, right?
No,
As I'm talking.
it doesn't.
But you'll notice that if you pay attention to your own internal thoughts, weird crap comes up, or images.
Yeah.
And that's the autoregressive, the LLM, yours generating what's next. And I don't know, a lot of times, like, why the heck is it doing that? And a lot of times it makes a lot of sense. If somebody's talking about fishing, I may all of a sudden get an image of when I was a kid fishing from our cottage dock, and it connects. It's not, me going to the bank and collecting money or something.
No,
So
exactly.
it has a logic to it. It has that autoregressive, and it solves the problem of memory because it was nobody could think of how memory would be stored in the brain, at least on the basis of the von Neumann architecture, where you store it on a hard drive, and then you got to go fetch it when you need it, and that'd be way too slow for us because the brain doesn't work that fast,
No.
and nobody's ever found a memory in the brain anyhow. Um, and there are a lot of experience that they cut away most of the brain, people can still remember, and so it's a reasonable hypothesis to think that we're running an LLM too, so we can talk to each other.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and it explains how children learn language. They don't. The only way they can learn it is to hear it. You can't teach them.
Nope.
They just hear it, and it's the idea is that somehow or another, the autoregressive architecture is given to us when we're born in some way, or maybe even before we are born. And then if you're around people talking, because everybody knows you can take any kid and put them in any language group anywhere, and they'll learn that language. It's not, conditioned by, you know, what was going on, with their parents or where they were. If you move them around, they'll be able to learn the language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are.
And it's kind of a glorious time for kids. They're like kind of hallucinogenic high all the time for about 3 4 years. It's all play and learning.
Yeah.
And then when they get language, then they get a little more organized and not so much fun anymore.
No,
And
I get complaints from my kids all the time. Now I have to do the work, and I don't want to do the work. I want to play.
and
Like,
then,
you have to learn.
and then they become teenagers and social animals, and then it's really hell to pay.
Hmm. I know. I have a young teenager right now.
Yeah. So
Hell.
so language is this really important event
Yeah.
in the history of humans. Researchers have tried to pinpoint when language developed. And there's no real way to say because there's no fossil record to look at, for one thing, about that points to words being said. However, most researchers believe that humans developed language somewhere between 100,000 years ago and 50,000 years ago. And there is a fossil record of the mouth and the throat, which would point to this. Apes, for example, can't say certain vowel sounds. They can't say certain words because the pharynx, which is right above the larynx, and the mouth are different sizes. But in humans, the mouth and the pharynx are about the same size, which interestingly enough allows us to make vowel sounds, which goes back to the proto-speech that Ron was talking about, the A-E-I-O-U sound. At the same time, our auditory complex began to develop, and we developed the three small inner bones of the ear, and those allowed us to recognize different sounds, but mostly consonants. So you put those two together, and that fossil record shows that those developed somewhere from about 500,000 years ago to the 50,000 years ago. So researchers think, somewhere around 50,000 years ago, humans developed language. But language allowed us to do several things. If we go back to Ron's idea about drumming, let's go there first. So in the book, we create a character called Dave, and this is before language is developed, and he leads a mammoth hunt, and they bring they manage to kill a mammoth, and they bring it back to the clan, and they have to tell the story. Well, they tell it with drumming. And because drumming is extremely effective in its percussiveness, you can make things very soft. You can make them very loud. You can make them energetic. You can make them very slow. So you can tell this story through drumming. But drumming, as Ron mentioned, is autoregressive. So you might start off very slow, but then it gets very rapid as you're in the chase for the mammoth, and then the actual kill. Maybe you have to defend the mammoth from saber-toothed tigers or smilodons, whichever one you want to use. So there's a way of communication, but
Let me
it's
just
not
add
language.
let me add one more thing, and that is the group can all drum together, and that's
Yes.
probably
So,
just as important.
and so that's really important because the group coming together understands what the drumming means. Language is like that. Language, though, does better than just drumming because language allows us to use symbols that can be passed down from generation to generation. So the ability to say to somebody, well, here's how you make a flint spearhead, and you can actually show them and tell them how you're doing it, can get passed down from father to son, mother to daughter, however, or mother to son. My mom actually taught me how to use a chainsaw. So I mean, that was when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
My dad was too busy being a doctor, so my mom had to teach me how to use a chainsaw. At any rate, this lore gets handed down generation to generation to generation. Technology gets handed down. Now, these two things go hand in hand: language, technology. It isn't, you really can't have an advancement in technology without language. It's true that a chimp can take a stick from a tree, put it down an ant hole, eat the ants. Not unlike our Pleistocene ancestors who were omnivorous and would eat ants too. The difference is that our Pleistocene ancestors had a language that said, we can take and make an axe head that can dig into the earth and dig up the ants.
So
And he can pass that knowledge on to the next generation who can
the
improve upon it.
the group has to know the language. You can't
Yeah.
create a language without the group.
No, exactly.
And so
So
that's important.
if
So
if I say bottle, you probably all recognize bottle, right? Or not?
yeah.
But,
So
you
Never
know,
saw it before.
actually, I'm toasting Mary, because I think she's such a nice person.
I am nice.
so at any rate, to get back to this idea, Ron's correct. I mean, without a group, you can't form a language. Without a group, you can't actually create incredible technology, especially in the 21st century. Nobody could build a cell phone by themselves.
Nope.
The technology is just too complicated, too sophisticated to do so. Same thing. So technology and language, they go together. And the control system hypothesis, Jacques Vallée's idea, this presence, I can see this presence working in a synergistic way with humans to create a better technology, to make things easier to survive, instead of just being an animals that are out foraging like carrion eaters. We can actually go out and hunt our own food. So
but it also, let me just interrupt you here, because the next thing that really happens is you start telling stories before there's any writing. So I could say, I got this by ordering it on Amazon.
Mhm.
And you can toast everybody with buying it. So I have to. The storytelling aspect is really important because that, in order to tell the story, you have to share a lot of words within the group, and so you're building that stronger group structure, right, Mark? So storytelling.
Absolutely. We go through this in the latest book, The High Strangeness of Bigfoot, about how technology and language all build on one another. But it is because of a group. And this is one of the things, and it isn't as though there aren't groups in the animal kingdom. Obviously, whales live together in pods, lions in prides. There's a murder of crows,
Yes.
that get together, all this sort of things. But we're the only species, as Ron said, that tells stories. And those stories convey knowledge.
Yeah.
And that knowledge gets passed down and worked on and improved. So to the point where in the 21st century, hey, everybody except for maybe groups in the Amazon that have never seen civilization before knows what a cell phone is or what a
Yeah,
smartphone is. And I
exactly.
actually, while we're talking here, I could call you if you gave me your phone number. I could call you. We could talk this way instead of the way we're talking now.
Yeah,
So there's an important lesson to be learned here, I think, for everybody, and that is that this presence isn't isn't working with humans to dominate. The presence is working with humans to open us up to everybody. This is the Sufi way of life. The Sufi way of life is being open to all spiritual ideas.
yeah,
And so, from my point of view, this presence is opening us up to be open to everybody. You come to me with a story, I don't sit there and go, oh my God, he's telling another story. I actually listen. I listen to
yeah,
that story going, wow, that is a fantastic story. And I can see how it would impress you as a child.
yeah,
Uh, Mary says something about growing up in the Netherlands and how it's different than growing up in the States. And instead of my saying, well, the States are much better, I listen to her and I say, wow, there are things that happen with you that could improve my life here.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
So
That's
what do
why
you think?
language and technology are so important.
So what do you
yeah.
all think of this hypothesis of Jacques Villay?
I think it's very interesting. I've never heard
Yeah,
of it before.
absolutely.
This is the first time for me.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting. But I really actually had the question because we were talking about languages and groups, and the group has to know the language. But now the
Mhm.
question backs for me: do you think that Bigfoot, for instance, lives in groups, or are they just lonely?
I think that they are manifestations or a mask of the presence. That's my interpretation.
Hmm.
In the sense they don't live like that. They show up for people like in these bizarre situations. Never can quite catch them, solidly. People will see them and then they disappear out of the blue. So, so I do not think that they're like a wolf or a polar bear or any. It's not of the same thing. It's my guess is that it's sort of. I bet in some way it's us. This whole presence thing, but it's extremely powerful because if it can produce those tic tacs moving like that, it's able to manipulate the physical world in a way that's way more than we can do. So
Yeah,
it'd be easy if it can do that. It can easily say my name, percuss some sounds for us, show up as a smell, um, as a hoot and a howl, some portal language. That'd be easy for it. Say my name. Um, that's my guess.
yeah,
It's a hypothesis I'm working with. So, um, and I do have sensitives, on my investigation, and they do sense something, an energy that they would call Bigfoot, and that it would suggest multiple, you know, 3, 4 animals, some young, some old. But there's no reason that it could not manifest that way through energy if these people were attuned to that. I don't feel that stuff. I'm not a sensitive in that way. Wish I was.
could come in handy sometimes.
Yeah.
I have the same. I work with that one. She is very sensitive. I just
You a
go.
sensitive Mary, or is he just talking about it?
No, I'm very sensitive since childhood. And I always thought it was a curse.
Oh
And
no.
Mm.
now it's handy. It is handy now. But as a child growing up in an environment who didn't believe in the paranormal and spiritual world, uh, it can be a curse because I knew things before they happened. And yeah, my mom always said she has big ears, so she hears everything. But after my grandma passed away, she was cremated, and I wasn't around. I was with some relatives, And after 2 weeks, we sat at a bonfire, and I told my mom, "You threw grandma in the fire." And that was the beginning of the belief of spiritual behavior and the spiritual
Mhm.
world and the paranormal for my mom, at least.
Cool. So
Yeah,
That is cool.
they've been sensitive throughout history, and a really important aspect of the group. The culture.
Mhm.
Um, they haven't always been in good standing. We burned a few at the stake here, but
Yep,
yeah. So I always bring them whenever I can on my investigations because they bring a different perspective.
they
And
do.
people, I think, we evolve, and we get, these talents are hidden in a lot of people and suppressed in a lot of people. Like you, maybe married for a while, and now they're kind of released, and I think that's really good, for sure.
Yeah,
But by the way,
agree.
people ask about Bigfoot, but nobody's ever captured an angel or a demon or a devil, right? No
Nope.
fossil records of them, and yet people carry on like crazy about them.
yeah, exactly.
And they see them,
And
and
yeah. And throughout history, the presence has manifested as angels, demons, the devil, God,
Yeah,
uh, and that's the worldview, the zeitgeist, of the time. The Saint Martin of Tours sees a beggar in the road. He cuts his tunic in half to cover him, and later on, he's looking at this beggar as an angel or a representation of Christ, and it changes his life completely. He goes from being a soldier in the Roman army to becoming a Christian, and later he is a saint for what he has done.
Yep.
Uh, uh, St. Francis of Assisi gets a vision of Christ and literally to build churches, and this is what he does. Uh, Here in the United States, Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon religion, had a visit from an angel, which gave him the golden tablets of the Mormon religion. So, so throughout history, the worldview is what, or the milieu of the times, I think, kind of helps people manifest what they want to at that time. Angels, demons. In the 21st century, it's different. And I'm not saying that religion is dead or anything like that, but in the 21st century, we're much more secular. And so I think we're going to have manifestations of the presence in a more secular manner. Secular means like UAPs, Bigfoot, which is huge because there is no part of the planet where people don't have some meeting with Bigfoot, whether it's in the Australian outback with what they call the Yowzi, the Himalayas with the Yeti. Here in the United States, we call it Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Sasquatch is a Salish Indian word meaning a forest dweller. Um, the Among the Lakota Indians, they use the word Sitanka for elder brother or Chiantanka for I'm sorry, Chiantanka for elder brother and Sitanka for big brother. So in the 21st century, we're going to be looking at these things through a secular lens. We're going to say, well, I don't see an angel. Oh, I wouldn't see an angel because that isn't the way my Sufism goes. But I would see a UAP, or I would see a Bigfoot, or I'd see some creature, or something that was totally out of the ordinary. On the other hand, a nun from there's a priory down the road in Boulder, and a nun there might actually see an angel. Maybe she doesn't have as much. She hasn't traveled the world as much as I have, and so she would see it that way. But in the 21st century, I think it's much more secular, and that's why the presence can manifest itself to that person or even to a group of people in a particular way.
Yeah.
And then it says, okay, my job here is done, and it vanishes. Not unlike the Cheshire Cat in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland.
Question, Mark, because you mentioned to us backstage that you do not do paranormal investigations. That's Ron's thing.
Mhm.
Has it never, ever popped up in your mind like maybe it's a good idea to come with Ron once? Or is it just not
Yes.
I,
interesting?
it's curious that you mentioned that, because I've actually always thought I'm better not being part of his investigations, because I can bring a different point of view to the books we write. But Ron just recently invited me to go on one of his expeditions here at the end of May, and I have agreed to go on it. So we'll see. If we have another conversation next year, you might find me a totally different person. My hair might be purple, and we'll, something strange.
Well, that will be a day. And if you agree to go on an investigation, is that for UAPs and Bigfoot, or
Uh,
are you open to look for disembodied voices to see if there is intelligence?
I don't want to silo myself. I don't want to say, "Oh, I'm only looking for this." I really want to be, when I go on this investigation with Ron, I want to be totally open to what happens. Like Ron was talking about the voice saying Ron.
Yeah,
And I mean, what if Ron had been, and Ron is actually very open to all of these things. But what if Ron had been saying, "Well, I have to smell Bigfoot"? He might have missed that entirely. Everybody might have missed it. So I think in order to be more well-rounded in the sense of receiving, uh, going through with the emptying my mind of any preconceptions of what I'm expecting to see or hear or experience.
yeah,
So,
Yeah.
so what we're going to do, because I have this kind of scientific background, it seems to make sense to go back to the site where we first heard the Bigfoot chatter, the drumming, and we have an occasion to do that on the end of May, as he mentioned, and repeat the experiment as best we could and see if there's repetition, something new shows up, just more another data point, and um, at least a few of the people that were there in the original time we did it, it's called Church Creek, and see what happens. And I don't know. I don't know if the phenomenon will repeat itself, do something different, or nothing at all. In any case, it's another data point, and I'm
yeah.
excited to do it. And we'll just have to see what happens because it's totally unpredictable.
Yeah, it is.
Each
Yeah.
time we've done it, something showed up totally different. It never repeats itself because it creates greater mystery that way.
Yeah.
Maybe Mark will be abducted, by an alien ship.
See? And he comes back with purple hair, definitely.
And they drop him off on Amsterdam and he starts smoking pot, right?
Well,
Probably.
It is possible. Everything's
I'll,
possible.
I'll definitely look both of you up if that does happen.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Absolutely.
Well, of course, if something happens, we are curious to know.
I need to know.
See?
I'm so curious.
A woman has spoken.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious too, because like I said, I've always kept back to give myself a different point of view on this. And now Ron's convinced me, and I'm thinking, let's see what's going on. I spend about 5 to 8 weeks every year at a retreat by myself up in Canada, and hopefully they'll allow me up there this year. And there's a nearby town that I go into for supplies, so I'm not completely alone, but I spend a lot of the time alone. And the interesting thing about that is I use it to write novels because I have no intrusions. So I'll take that time and I'll write a novel. And normally I would go up and write a novel with a outline in mind, and I would outline it beforehand, and it's a flexible outline, so because characters change as you're writing them. But recently, I've started a new series, kind of based on what Ron and I are doing, called Jack Doyle Paranormal Detective. And I go up there, and in line with what Ron was talking about with our LLMs and the idea that language is recursive, I don't have an outline. I do I do it. Earl Stanley Gardner used to do. He was the Perry Mason creator. He would just start writing, and I just start writing, and the story just seems to be in that recursive manner. The words just go, and I write until I can't write anymore that day, and generally it's somewhere around 2,000 or 3,000 words, and then I start the next day. And it's, to me, being a person who has been very structured for most of my life until Ron got me into the Bigfoot stuff, even with my Sufi background, I like structure. This being unstructured has been in many ways more productive than being structured. So I can understand how the presence can take something that is structured, a paradigm, and say, we're going to change things up here. You're no longer going to make your flint tools in this way. You're going to make a Clovis head, which is stronger and better. And the next thing you know, everything changes technologically for hunter-gatherers. They're more effective.
Yeah.
So I find that for myself, I'm actually more effective being unstructured, and I really want to see where it's going. And so when Ron and I go up into the Colorado woods here at the end of May, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah. I think it might add something to your book as well in the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you guys want to fly out, you're welcome to come.
I wish I could. If I only could. You can take me on screen.
There you go.
Probably could.
Yeah.
couldn't you? By
Yeah.
the way, this is the best connection I've ever had with anybody in Europe. Not the
You should have-
people. I mean, you're okay, but the technical side is wonderful.
No, you should have seen me last week. That sucked balls.
Yeah.
I was in Germany. You do not want to use the internet there.
Oh, wow.
In
That is so
England, it's
bad.
really sucky. Doing a Zoom, and I've done them in the UK a few times, and they're barely passable.
Yeah.
We've
We've had that a lot.
Still have
A lot of
Wi-Fi.
delays.
It's
Yeah.
really good.
We had one bad connection because there was a storm and a lot of lightning, and we were doing an interview with Scotland, of all places, and
Yep.
we had a bad connection. But for the rest, even with Japan, we had a very strong connection.
Yeah, we had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the bad connection was in Scotland because she had to sit in the kitchen to get internet. So
Yeah.
Well, I say.
I actually have a house like that myself. Where I'm sitting right now, I have a really good internet connection, but if I go out on my front porch, which is only 30 feet away, it vanishes.
yeah,
Okay.
I used to have that problem, but nowadays I have strong internet because
Yeah.
I'm in the attic, and usually
Mhm.
everything stops, and I'm gonna be like, it's always a standstill and a funny face. So, but nowadays it works perfectly. I don't know
Yeah.
what they did to it, but it works. I'm
Yeah.
fine. Don't touch it.
Exactly.
They screw over my internet. I have one more question for Ron because, of course, I did my homework a little bit. Um, it was mentioned that you did a very popular program that it's pretty popular here in the Netherlands, and it's called Becoming Evil.
Yeah.
You've written that program, right?
I produced it, yeah.
Yeah.
To produce it.
Have you
Serious?
ever had a case that you produced that you were like, this could be a paranormal case instead of just a very bad person?
Well, there's a lot of. Are you familiar with the paranormal terminology in some way?
A bit, yeah.
So there's certainly a lot of residual paranormal activity related to both the victims, location-wise, and the perps, the serial killers, for sure. I did a piece on that true crime podcasters tell their most weird story or case, and half of them are related to serial killers and the residual energy created by, as I said, the victims or not. Yeah, like I became, yeah, I'm an expert on serial killers. You probably guessed that, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't my choice. I was hired to do this shit. And then once you get stuck with it, there you go.
Yeah.
But it's done extremely well. I tell people serial killers made me a millionaire.
Yeah.
So why
So
are you?
they did do one good job.
Yeah, they got me some money and I can talk to you now.
Exactly. Well, that's two. That's two good jobs.
But in terms of, these perps are psychopaths. You know that term?
Yeah.
And I think, to think in a kind of a paranormal way would be foreign to them because there's so much about controlling life, and which is, the ultimate in some way sense of power,
Mm.
which is kind of what psychopaths are about, and manipulating people and controlling them. And it doesn't seem to have a psychological edge to it in any way that I know of.
Mm.
They just don't pay attention to that shit.
No, they only pay attention to them.
To themselves,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the lack of feelings they have. They have
They have
no
no,
remorse, no empathy, nothing.
they have no empathy for the victims,
No, just for
and
themselves.
certainly no compassion for their suffering and
Yeah.
wanting to fix it. It's all about control and manipulating. But no, I've not heard any. In all the cases I've looked at, I've never heard that there was a paranormal connection in any of their behaviors. I don't know if any of the I never heard any of the victims really. Well, actually, if you look at some of the cult massacres, you'll have a whole different story there. It's usually based on some sort of paranormal religious sense. It's a whole different thing. You know what I'm talking about? Cults.
Yeah.
And so they're often, as you probably know, they're based on I have contact with Jesus or God, and I'm a special person that way. And people fall prey to that. And of course, they're manipulative, but they're not psychopathic in the way the serial killer is. And certainly those leave a huge stain, that have killed many people. I've done a series on mass murderers too, and a lot of them are, well, a lot of them, are it's about revenge. Mass murderers, but the cult ones are kind of a unique category in their own, and
Yeah.
there's always a huge paranormal aspect to them. Some connection to some spiritual something or other that elevates them among the group, that attracts the group to them, and then they become abusive to the group and manipulative. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's to keep these
definitely
separate
does.
in some way.
Yeah. Sometimes if I look at some cases, I think, how the heck can be someone that messed up in that? But yeah.
So there's in doing a lot of psychological stuff. I think everything's on a scale.
Mm,
All four of us have a little bit of the serial killer in us, and
yeah.
because it's been conserved in terms of evolution, because it becomes useful. It certainly was useful when you had to go kill somebody in your neighbor tribe, to to help defeat them.
Yeah.
And do it without any sense of remorse. The Japanese did that during World War II to the Chinese, and some got a real good taste for it,
Mhm.
killing and raping the women, and then they couldn't stop. Um, One of the more interesting cases of a serial killer was a mob hitman, and he got a taste for the killing and control, and did some on his own just because he liked it. And any kind of person can become a serial killer. You can be black, Indian, old, young. We got grandma serial killers, lesbian serial killers. There's no demarcation of any kind. Can be rich, brought up in a good home, poor, brought up in a poor home. Doesn't matter.
No,
It just shows up in I don't know why.
no, it's something. Yeah,
But
it's
it's all
something inside the human.
Yeah, I think during war it's about survival, and the psychopath or narcissist jump out and are great in doing what they do, but just for the fun, I can't imagine it.
No, me neither.
There's an interesting psychological study done on soldiers trained in the U.S. military
Yeah,
between World War II and Vietnam. So in World War II, the historians studied soldiers that were in the field, and there came to a conclusion that only about 10% of the soldiers actually ever fired their gun purposefully to kill someone. That doesn't mean that they weren't firing and they may have hit somebody, but that they were really purposefully trying to shoot somebody. By Vietnam, the training of soldiers changed and it was up to 50%. So you can train somebody to kill without remorse,
yeah,
whether in wartime. And we did a show on snipers for Center Communications with Ron. And in Vietnam, there was a whole company of snipers trained by this one particular individual, and none of them ever felt that they did something wrong because they had been trained that they were doing, and this is making it very simplistic, but maybe it's easy for people to understand. They were like doing God's work.
Or
And so they had a reason for doing it.
I would say it would be, my understanding is that they were doing it for their fellow soldiers.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
for their fellow soldiers might be
Yeah.
is a better way of saying it. So people can be trained to kill, but that doesn't make them psychopaths.
No,
There's something
No.
else that's happening there.
I
In
I
addition,
I think they are a bit manipulated, brainwashed, hypnotized, and some of the soldiers get coke or whatever substance they allow them to take to become good at what they do. Here in the Netherlands, during World War One and Two, the government gave them cocaine. So
oh wow,
they had a better condition, they could fight longer,
Yep.
they were tougher, and it took away a lot of fear.
Mhm, mhm,
So
Yeah.
I do think manipulation,
Mhm.
brainwash, and hypnotizing
Mhm.
does the trick.
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
does.
in this country, there's something called a SWAT team. Pretty much every
Yeah,
you have the same thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
and they usually have a sniper. They will have a
Mhm.
sniper, and that person is really quite different in demeanor. The SWAT team is charge in, full of energy, guns blazing. The sniper is totally different. They have to be the most settled, calm person in the group because they're mostly waiting.
Yeah.
And and then if they're going to take a shot, they can't be jumpy or anything like that. They have to be very calm. And in interviewing some of the snipers, the guy said, well, one of the more heroic guys from the U.S. military in Afghanistan said, you know, it's hard for me to get out of bed. I'd just stay in bed if I had to. He was just so calm, but he was an excellent shot, and you have to, it's a whole different way of being. And it's not probably unlike, the hunter, the primitive hunter who's totally in touch with everything that's going on and hunting their prey, who we kind of idolize in a way. So I see these people that are good at this. They're kind of like that. They get in this altered state in which they're not going to shoot unless it's absolutely necessary, and they can take the shot, and they have to predict what's going to happen. They have to be good at that, just as if you're shooting an animal, it might bolt, and you have to track it. You can see it might stop when it has to cross a creek or something like that. So you have to be totally one with the whole situation. So and the ones I interviewed, they're like some of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, in a way, because they've made peace with what they do.
Yeah.
That was just my personal experience, and I think that following that hunter motif, that we idolize, is the one who's one with nature, and that's why a lot of hunters hunt, is because they become one with nature, and the prey and the self dissolves. And I think that's what happens with these snipers these days. They're
Yeah.
not, if they got any gung ho on them, they're out. They're not doing it because
No,
they're
exactly.
they're a danger to everybody.
They are. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm kind of out of questions. How are you, Mary?
Uh, my eyes caught the mystery of Bradshaw Ranch.
Oh,
What's the mystery?
well, a lot of shit goes down there.
UAPs, I think animal mutilation. Um,
No animal mutilation.
no animal mutilation. Oh, that. But
Dinosaur footprints, but not animal mutilation.
okay.
Orbs, strange creatures, well-known. I'll just call it a portal that's
Yeah.
active and not active. I interacted with an alien being there with my laser. It was sitting in a chair, and I poked its foot with my laser, and it kicked it, hit, looked at it. Um, it's just a really strange high energy thing. My son-in-law saw Bigfoot out the window. Um, yeah, you should go there sometime.
Oh,
It's owned by our government, the U.S.
oh,
government.
didn't know that. Now I'm curious. If you go on a paranormal investigation and you have encounters, all the hairs on your arm, on your whole body stands up. Is it the same if you have those encounters with those energies from a Bigfoot kind of creature, UAP or whatever?
You're talking about me personally, or the people I've been with? People I've been with have had many more different experiences. Like I said, I'm kind of immune to a lot of this stuff because usually I'm filming, and that's a different mentality.
Yeah.
I have to be kind of thinking, what can I get next? What's happening? Can I get it? After we did the thing at Sedona, it's right next to Bradshaw Ranch, where we did the football stadium thing. So we took 17 people there that night, and they just had their own experiences. Everybody had stuff going on. They all had a chance to kind of stand in where the portal was. It wasn't all that strong. It kind of tipped people over, and there was a downward pressure on everybody, and but it's made people sick before if you stand in it. So yeah, everybody has their own experiences there. Like I said, my big one was interacting with that thing sitting in the chair. That was really cool.
Yeah.
That I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Bradshaw Ranch is in this really unique area of Arizona. It's northern Arizona, up toward the Grand Canyon, and the area is it's desert Southwest, and strange things about the deserts. In every desert of the world, there are strange things that happen. It seems like deserts collect anomalies. They collect different kinds of energies. But the energy at Bradshaw has been documented for thousands of years. The original inhabitants, which are known as the Snahua Indians, documented through petroglyphs. Images of Bigfoot, images of
It's awesome.
ETs, of aliens. So this area in particular has a long, rich history of strange happenings. And Bradshaw Ranch, when Ron went down there, it had been in the 40s and 50s. It was a movie set for American Westerns. John Wayne was in them. Elvis Presley did a Western there I think in the 60s.
Yeah.
And so it sort of had a benign kind of feeling to it, but underneath that, something was really cooking. And as the movie set moved out in the 70s, it became kind of a dude ranch sort of thing. Strange things started to be reported by the owners. And they not only started reporting them, they actually started investigating them. And this is where Ron comes in, because a series of synchronicity events sort of led him to going to Bradshaw. And Ron, you should take it from here, because this is your bailiwick.
Oh, I don't know if I have to tell the whole story, but there was some very sophisticated instrumentation that had been left behind, now growing a few cobwebs. I mean, weird shit stuff powered by batteries and solar devices and everything. So something was going on there. The government said it was investigating environmental conditions on native plants, which is really absurd because there were hardly any, because it was heavily grazed, by the cattle and horses. And it was pretty tightly held for a while. And then it was just kind of abandoned. And the way you get in, you have to crawl underneath the fence. And once you're in there, a lot of graffiti. There's like three objects there's the windmill, the adobe house, which is the original place where the settlers built, because adobe things were nice, but it handled the heat, temperature regulation. And then the big main house, which was a movie set and had lots of rooms and tremendous amount of great graffiti throughout the thing. So many people just come and go there.
Yeah.
Not many come at night because it's too spooky for them.
Heard that before.
But if you ever get a chance, let me know and I'll tell you how to get there.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. Everybody has some experience when they go there.
Yeah.
There are a number of places like this throughout the world that they seem to gather energy. In a couple other places in the United States are Mount Shasta in California, Harney Peak in South Dakota, which is in the Black Hills of South Dakota, Ayers Rock in Australia. There seem to be these places that gather energy. There are individuals who think that there are something called ley lines throughout the earth. I'm a believer in them myself, where energy can be channeled. And if you look here in Boulder, Colorado, for example, there's a lot of iron ore along with quartz in the area, which is, you might as well create a huge battery here. As far as that's concerned. But you get certain conditions like that around the world, and you get a place that has interesting things happening around it. And as the Sanaho Indians drew in their rock art back 1,000 years ago, they draw these Bigfoot creatures, they draw these alien creatures, spaceships, and they don't have a Jules Verne type of education to create 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea or H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, but they're creating figures that we now can look at and say, well, wow, yeah, that's an alien, that's a Bigfoot. How can an unsophisticated culture, and this isn't to say that they aren't a smart culture, an unsophisticated culture by our standards, create things that are recognizable in the 21st century as these technologies? So
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the fact that these areas are areas of profound amounts of power. And that power manifests itself in different ways. The presence can come in there and it can be helping individuals with the technology or with a way of expressing themselves. So I'll be interesting to see as Ron and I investigate more of this, as he investigates more of these, we go to different places, how that energy in these different places compares to Bradshaw Ranch, for example, or Mount Shasta. Or even Boulder.
So I have a thought on that, fitting in with the control theory hypotheses, that the mystery needs places of mystery to keep the mystery alive. Like Stonehenge, many temples of every religious persuasion have created places of mystery where you go there, you go on pilgrimage. You got any in Holland?
Yeah, we have some Stonehenges here,
Yeah.
which are very interesting for me.
So yeah, you go to them and you think there's something special going on, and you might get a little buzz or something. And so now these places are becoming more technological, like Skinwalker Ranch and Bradshaw Ranch. They have a kind of way of interacting with technology. Are you familiar with Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah.
Yep.
The presence there, as Colonel Alexander calls it, it messes with their technology all the time, showing that it's superior, keeping the mystery alive for these scientists, who are material.
Shutting down all material, all computers.
Yeah.
It's a mess every single time.
Yep.
Yeah, we did an investigation on the edge of the property, and we have this device called a REM pod that lights up if something enters the little
Yeah.
radio frequency. You know of it? She says, yeah, okay. So when we were there for at least an hour, it never stopped going off the whole hour. Never had anything like that before. So it says, yeah, I kind of confirmed that some weird stuff's going on there.
Yeah.
And my son-in-law had a time slip where he was interacting and can't remember any of it. And for me, he was just sitting there.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a powerful place. Another person, people feel a sadness there of the energy, but I think that's all contributing to keeping the mystery going.
Oh yeah.
And like Mark said, there are a lot of places like that, and so people go to them. We have one we kind of created in the town of Bailey. It's a prayer tree, like praying, where you go, where the Ute Indians went for medicine, and you touch that tree and you get a vision or something happens. Many people have done it now, and so it's become a sacred site for people to come to, and it kind of goes on that way. We need mystery places.
Oh yeah. We
Yeah.
do.
I think that has a lot to do with our own psyche, because if it changes you there, your worldview was something that shouldn't happen. You can't deny it anymore, and you're changed.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's a place in California, Sequoia National Park, the largest trees in the world.
Yeah.
People report going to the park and Ron and I also had this experience, but people report going to the park and they'll hug the trees. Literally, they can feel the heartbeat of the world.
Heard about that. Yeah.
It is not just like, oh wow, this is really cool, I'm hugging a tree. It's like you can feel something thumping like a heart, and
Yeah.
it goes through you. So Ron and I, we go and we hug the same tree, and we can't touch each other's fingers or anything, but I could feel Ron through the other side, and he could feel me, and then we could feel this earth movement. And the heartbeat of the world, to me, is the best description.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that my wife and I, we know that the earth is alive, and
Mhm.
you can feel the earth breathing at sometimes. If
Have you ever gone out at dusk? Have you ever gone out at dusk, and not close your eyes, but semi-close your eyes, and you look at the horizon, and you can see it breathe?
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. The
It
first
is.
time I did it by accident once. Now I do it all the time, but I did it by accident once, and I didn't tell anybody for years. In fact, actually, this is the first time I ever told anybody. Uh, I it just amazed me. I said, "Oh no, it's got to be a problem with my eyes." My dad was an eye, ear, nose, and throat surgeon, so I go back to my dad and I say, "Oh, I think I'm having some trouble with my eyes." I didn't tell him what was going on. He says, "No, there's nothing wrong with your eyes." Of course, I was the youngest of four. I mean, it's like the P in pneumonia; they just forget you with you, the youngest. At any rate, but years later, I could do it, not by accident. And I'm not saying that this makes me special or anything. Don't get me wrong. Anybody can see this.
Yeah.
You just have to empty your head of trying to explain of the little voice in your head, that LLM in your head telling you what the world looks like all the time. You
Yeah.
just got to let that one go. Got to get into that mindfulness, that big the flow state, the big space state, and it happens. You see it.
Yeah.
And once you see that, you understand, like you said, the earth is alive. I I I take walks around here in Boulder. I'm picking up trash all the time because I just can't imagine the earth likes having trash on it.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I always say behave like animals. I've never seen an animal throw trash on the floor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They shit on it.
But that's not trash. That's fertilizer.
Let me tell you about my dog, though. She likes to get into the waste paper basket and pull out Kleenexes and leave them on the floor.
But it's human trash.
I
There
couldn't.
had to be something.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself.
All right. We are nearing the end of our show. If
Yeah.
people would like to follow you, where can they follow you? Both of you.
We have a Facebook page called the Bigfoot Trilogy Chronicles. And that's the only place that we have that's publicly available to people.
All right.
Otherwise, the movies that Ron have made are on all the like YouTube. Books are available at Amazon. There's all of my books are ebooks. If they want to read my Jack Doyle Paranormal series, there are ebooks at Amazon.
I'm sure I'm going to when this comes out on Spotify, I will put every link in there that I can find, so that people can click it and buy books, watch the movies and the series. I really want to thank you both for coming on. This has been an amazing chat for me and very
Absolutely.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
there were
absolutely.
things that I was like, I've never heard before, but that's very interesting. So
Yeah.
if you are able to come back next year, it will be our honor, because
Yeah.
I would really like to know how the investigation went and if you went on more investigations after that one,
Yeah, sure.
and if your hair is purple.
Well, thank you very much for having us on. It has been a really nice intellectual discussion of things.
It
Yeah.
has been, definitely. Um, as always, I'm going to click everybody in the background, and we will end with some music, and we will be back next week. I'm looking at Mary because now I don't know anymore.
Oh, now I have to get my calendar. Oh my God. I didn't prepare.
I came from holiday. I have no idea anymore.
Yeah,
My
no
agenda is somewhere.
excuse, no excuse. I had some busy days because of let me check. Next week we have Yehan.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And we have next week 2 podcasts because we have on Saturday Vince Keelan.
Oh yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And
Gotta be busy again.
yes, I have to check because the week after that, I think we have 2 podcasts again.
See? And then I say she has to do the planning. Now I'm busy.
Well, I agreed on some on some podcasts, but I didn't write them down.
Oh, you have to look.
Tell me about that.
I know for a fact May
This
13.
this is why the presents created the iPhone and the
I
calendar.
I don't use my phone for that. But May 13, we have a guest,
Yep.
and I haven't seen him on a podcast before, not in an interview, not in a podcast,
No, I haven't.
and it has to do with paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a retired
Detective.
homicide detective.
Yep.
And that's the
Oh,
only clue
interesting.
you're getting.
Yep. We're not gonna say anything more. All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Guys,
I hope you have a very nice day the rest of the day.
Yeah.
we'll give it a shot. You too.
Oh,
It's
Yeah,
been a
hope
real
you get some
pleasure.
good sleep tonight.
Oh yes, we will.
Oh, no problem.
I just drove home today, so I'm gonna be tired.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye, everybody.
See you next week.
Voices from the cracks in the floor. Shadows bending where light won't go. Chasing truth in a haunted show. Are they real or something? Psychic dreams or skeptics cling. Ghosts of questions circling within. Answers vanish before they land. Investigators with their tools in hand, talking to the dark like it understands. Spirits rising from the